Hello and welcome to a character analysis of Brian Moser from the Dexter universe. So firstly, an introduction. Brian Moser, better known as the Ice Truck Killer, NHI Killer, or Rudy Cooper, is one of Dexter Morgan's most challenging adversaries. In season 1 of the show, he masquerades under the alias Rudy Cooper, and then his true identity emerges later in that season. In Dexter Original Sin, we get to see Brian when he's a young man, as he causes even more carnage in Miami. What makes Brian compelling is how he personifies untreated trauma, which I think is a perfect comparison to Dexter, who was also traumatized from the event we'll discuss soon, and Harry kind of guides him through it and gives him the code, whereas Brian has no help. So now we'll get into Brian's background. Brian was born in the late 1960s in Miami, Florida, to Joe Driscoll and Laura Moser. Both were drug addicts and separated. Laura Moser was an informant for Miami Metro against drug gangs, which were very prevalent at the time. She began an affair with cop Harry Morgan. Brian Moser was a quiet boy, and he was very attached to his little brother Dexter. We see scenes in Original Sin where Brian is taking the tails off lizards, which may be shown as early signs of psychopathic tendencies, but it has to be said he loved Dexter a lot, and that was probably the most important person in his life, along with his mother. So the cartel discovers the right identity of an informant, and they take her to a container with the boys, and they basically saw up Laura with a chainsaw into numerous pieces and leave the boys there in a container for 2 days, I believe. And this is kind of like ground zero for the whole Dexter franchise, in my opinion, this event, especially for Dexter and Brian, as he's a key character too. The morning of Laura's death, we see the sun's painting her hand in a kind of multicolored pattern on her fingernails, and this is something that haunts Brian and occupies his mind for the rest of his life. So, after this event, Dexter Morgan is adopted by the Morgans, and Brian is with them too, but he still exhibits dangerous behavior. There's a point where he kind of tries to strangle baby Deborah or suffocate her, and Doris Morgan is like, we can't have you here. And he kind of goes through foster homes. He suffers abuse, bullying, which added to his trauma. And eventually he goes to a mental hospital in Tampa, Florida. He's diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, which isn't really surprising. And lacking the code of Harry and the guidance that Dexter received, Brian's childhood horrors and trauma really channel themselves into a compulsive need to kill. And so, with Original Sin, Brian, up until he's 21, Brian masquerades himself as being well and is released. And he goes on a set of kills of people that we see around him in the past. And he becomes known as the NHI, No Human Involved Killer, in 1991, and we'll get into that. And in relation to Dexter Season 1 and Original Sin, between 1991 and 2006, we do not know exactly what Brian did, but we know he adopted the alias Rudy Cooper after killing Rudy in 1998 and studied in France. He trained as a prostheticist and got a job at his hometown of Miami. In relation to the NHI killings, it is clear to therapists that we see Harry looking at a file in Original Sin. The only person in Brian's life is Dexter. He loves him and is obsessed with him. he just occupies his mind all the time, which is very prevalent in the notes that are taken. And the kills, there's guys that were kind of bullying him in foster homes or taking his food and stuff like that. And also this woman who I believe was like a manager of these foster kids. She denied Brian from being with Dexter, and that really annoyed Brian a lot, evidently, and he killed her. And he also killed the former therapist. They're talking, and this therapist says to Brian, maybe you shouldn't see Dexter because he might get overwhelmed. And this is like, with Dexter discussions with Brian, it lights a fire under him and his emotions cloud his brain. He goes very violent. So for his physical description, Brian is tall with kind of pretty boy looks that he uses to disarm people. And as Rudy Cooper, we see him wearing his spotless uniform. And I think that's a good juxtaposition for the identity he's hiding. He's just a clean-cut prosthetics, and then he's the ice truck killer at the same time. So on Brian's personality, as with antisocial personality disorder, he is very detached and unemotional. He shows zero remorse as he kills. He's exceptionally intelligent and methodical, as shown by his career as a prosthetist and navigating the various things he did to get to the point he is in season 1. He has a compulsive need for control, another reason he became a prosthetist. He has a pretty nihilistic view of morality and life in general. He is a very skilled manipulator, as seen as how he disarms Barbara at the bingo before killing her, and how in season 1 of Dexter, he gets close to Deborah Morgan to get close to Dexter and just kind of maneuvers himself in there pretty well. One of his greatest strengths is his capacity for long-term planning. He uses his prosthetic skills to execute body preparation with forensic precision, and we know he became obsessed with the human body after seeing his mother's death, and that event and Dexter are pretty much all he thinks about. He has great patience when it comes to kills. He waited for years to kill the victims he committed when he was the NHI killer. As for weaknesses, definitely his obsession with Dexter clouds his emotion. He's pretty flawless. Up until someone mentions Dexter, then you just kind of lose control completely. And on the outside he appears cold and cool, but beneath that, all Brian Moser is a traumatic person yearning for the bond with the only family he has, which is Dexter. And this is quite clear throughout everything we see from him, the whole franchise. As for his role in the story, season 1, so when you see season 1, it becomes clear that to Dexter these aren't normal murders because they're personal. He leaves stuff, the doll in his fridge, they're personal places to Dexter, and that intrigues him. So in 2006, season 1, Brian Moser begins killing prostitutes and others, draining their blood, freezing their bodies, and slicing them and leaving them in a demonstrative fashion that attracts the attention of Miami Metro. He is dubbed the Ice Truck Killer in the local press. He has probably twofold goal. He likes killing, and he also wants to attract the attention of Dexter, who he also knows is a killer, because he witnesses killing the people that are trafficking the Cuban immigrants and brings back the body. He dives down, he gets the body, so he knows Dexter is a killer also. Brian exhibits traits consistent with antisocial personality disorder, which are lack of empathy, remorse or guilt, and he just kills for for killing, really. He just clearly has a lot of these bad tendencies. And then I think with the symbolism and theme of Brian, it's that trauma left untreated can lead to bad stuff, like what Brian becomes. And he is like the shadow self of Dexter. The shadow self is a term of a dark part of a person that can do the worst things they can do. And it's seen as Brian can be the shadow self of Dexter, as a killer but without guidance. And I think that he's also quite cocky and confident, because when he does the kills, he shows off his level of surgical precision, and he enjoys kind of toying with Miami Metro. He reminds me of Hannibal Lecter. He just likes dominating, you know. So Brian's key relationships are Dexter and Deborah, and also Harry in Original Sin. So we've gone over this, that he's obsessed with Dexter, and in Original Sin we see early on he just wanted to connect with Dexter and just be brothers, and he just wanted family, basically. For Deborah, in season 1, Deborah is a pawn Brian used to get close to Dexter. Maybe he had an attraction or love for her, possibly, but the end goal for him is always Dexter. Dexter's always at the top of the mountain. And we see his manipulation skills really come to the fore as he just kind of poses as this random, handsome prosthetist who just happens to go on a date with Deborah, but we all know what happens then. And then he kind of has a pretty rough relationship with Harry, because Harry in Original Sin, we see in 1991, he knows that Brian is probably the NHI killer, because he spots in crime scenes him wearing a cap, and he knows who that is because he knew him as a young boy. And really, Brian just hates Harry. Brian despises him, because in Brian's head, Brian and Dexter are just their brothers against the world, but Harry is there, an obstacle to that, and that infuriates Brian completely. And some of the most iconic scenes for Brian, for me, the most memorable one is when Dexter goes to the house in season 1, and Brian is like, you always had trouble saying Brian, because Brian is what Dexter called him. And that was a very good twist, because I didn't see it coming. And season one is really exceptional. I really enjoyed it. And definitely another memorable scene is, I think, the first time Brian kills in season 1, how Dexter is so intrigued. He respects him. That's really memorable too. And also that scene where Brian is on his laptop and leaves a message and then goes into his room where he dissects the bodies. I think that's very iconic too, because that's when we know that Brian is the eye stroke killer. And I think Brian is universally loved in the Dexter franchise because he's a very iconic villain. He has that family link with Dexter, which is very strong. And he's very popular in the media, the Dexter media, and a very enjoyable character to analyze and discuss. And who knows, we may see more of him in the future, in Original Sin possibly. So in conclusion, Brian is really a testament to the horrors of childhood trauma and what that sort of can lead to. As his darker mirror, he kind of shows us side by side the killers who have a code. Dexter, well, Dexter's still a killer, but compared to Brian, he's better because Brian just causes chaos wherever. And I think when you dive deeper into him, he's more than a killer. He's really a symbol. And back to his core goal is just to be with Dexter. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.